Part 1. Lando. Chapter 1.
The Talon Vagabond was on the run once more, but this time there were hitchhikers aboard.
Hyperspace!
C-3PO echoed in a dismayed tone as he struggled to free himself. The droid's limbs were tangled up with Lobot, R2-D2, and the equipment sled in one corner of the Vagabond's airlock, a chamber that had suddenly become a space-going prison.
You must be mistaken, Master Lobot.
I am not mistaken, said Lobot, pushing a flailing golden leg away from his faceplate. All my data links terminated at the same moment, in exactly the same manner I associate with a hyperspace jump.
There was a course change, too, during the acceleration,
Lando said from the opposite corner of the lock. He flexed his ungloved right hand, trying to drive the bone-chilling cold from his aching fingers.
Master Lando,
C-3PO cried in his most plaintive voice.
Can't you make it stop?
I didn't make it start, 3PO.
Lando snapped.
With all respect, Master Lando, you most certainly did.
3PO said huffily.
Now you must reach back into that hole and do whatever you did. And quickly too. Colonel Pakpiket will be most upset with us for running off with his starship.
Colonel Pakpiket is probably inventing new words in Hortek right now,
said Lando.
But at least he's on a ship that he can boss. We're not. Any damage over there? Lobot, R2-D2?
The little astromech droid emerged from the jumble of bodies and chirped once.
R2-D2 reports that all of his systems are operational,
said 3PO. I'm uninjured, Lando, said Lobot. My suit took the impact of the equipment sled, but my data links are still all down, and I'm finding it disorienting. Lando nodded.
R2, can you help Lobot out?
Rotating in midair with the aid of his microthrusters, the droid chittered disagreeably.
Don't be rude,
3PO chided.
What's going on?
Master Lando, R2 says he prefers to keep his systems private.
Yeah, well, I don't like telepaths either, R2,
said Lando.
But I'd sure like to be able to think at the Colonel right now. Give Lobot a link to your event log. There might be something in there we can use to figure out what happened. Does anyone see my right glove?
Lobot was clinging with one hand to the equipment sled. I think your glove blew out the airlock in the decompression.
Just perfect.
Lando looked at his purpled hand, then at the inflated wrist cuff that was keeping his suit sealed.
What's the pressure in here now?
640 millibars, said Lobot. Repressurization began after the entry sealed.
Repressurization? That's interesting. From where?
Lando craned his head and looked at the seamless, featureless bulkheads.
R2, see if you can find the vents.
The droid acknowledged the order with a beep and rose to begin cruising along the bulkheads at close range.
All right. Here's the way it looks to me,
said Lando.
We're no longer invited guests and welcome visitors. She shook off Lady Luck and tried to spit us out. Probably would have succeeded if she hadn't been trying to run away from the task force at the same time.
Which raises a question, said Lobot. Why didn't she know?
I'm listening.
It appears to be a misjudgment. 2 defense routines were activated without consideration of their combined effect. The repressurization of this compartment appears to be another inconsistency.
Do you have an explanation?
These events suggest to me that the ship is either under the control of systems with limited intelligence, or under the control of beings with limited intelligence. When he saw Lando's expression, Lobot added, At this point, it's not possible to distinguish between those possibilities.
Maybe if we figure that out, we'll know something that can help us get on top here,
said Lando.
I'm sure of this much. That lock closed because of the jump, not as any favor to us. We're not wanted here. And if we're not clear of this compartment by the time the Vagabond leaves hyperspace, I don't think too much of our chances.
Master Lando, I am certain Colonel Packbiget and the Armada are pursuing us.
Said 3PO.
The sooner we leave hyperspace, the sooner they can rescue us.
Yeah, they're going to be looking for us.
Said Lando.
But finding us, we could pop out 5 light years from where we were, or 50, or 500. And normal evasive tactics would call for an immediate course change, then another jump. Once that happens, you might as well be playing hide-and-seek with the Ewoks on Endor.
Master Lando, there must be some way they can rescue us. Surely they wouldn't abandon us. If they do not come for us, we are all doomed to perish as prisoners, lost in space.
3PO, we can't afford to wait for them.
Lando tapped his faceplate to remind the droid why.
The chrono's already moving. Lobot and I could be dead before this ship even decides to leave hyperspace. That's why we have to act now. We can't count on any help from the Armada unless we can figure out some way to give them some help finding us first. Until then, we're on our own.
3PO raised his arms and his voice together.
We apologize.
He called to the ship.
Please believe me, I never meant to harm anyone.
Shut up, 3PO.
Yes, sir.
Lando, said Lobot.
What?
It couldn't hurt, said Lobot. Someone might be listening. Lando frowned.
As far as this ship is concerned, we're pirates, burglars, tomb robbers, or worse. Not too likely they'll forget that, just because we suddenly develop better manners after breaking down the front door.
The probability of success may be low, said Lobot, but diplomatic words are the tool 3PO is best equipped to wield, and perhaps an apology will prove to be the key that will open the next door. Sighing, Lando waved his gloved hand toward C-3PO.
All right, but 3PO, a little dignity, please.
Of course, Master Lando.
The droid said, a hint of defensiveness in his tone.
I am programmed to conduct myself in a dignified manner at all times. Why? It's one of the fundamental principles of etiquette and protocol.
All right.
Lando said, cutting him short.
Just get to it. We have no idea how much time we have. Use the secondary comm channel so Lobot and I can still hear each other.
Very well, Master Lando.
3PO said, then seemingly fell silent.
Lobot, you have access to R2's event log?
Yes, Lando.
See if you can figure out our new heading from his gyro and accelerometer readings leading up to the jump. Maybe that plus R2's astrographic database can tell us something about how much time we have.
New Republic ferret IX-26 came out of hyperspace close enough to its destination for the planet to fill most of the forward view screen. Check the coordinates, Craddock Stopa ordered, frowning. Absolute reference. The astrogator says 44, 196, 210. The pilot spun the index wheel on the ship's log with a swipe of his palm. Yeah, that's what you gave me. Those numbers came directly from the Third General Survey. Stopa pointed at the astrogation display. But if I'm reading your board correctly, it says that this planet is Malta OBEX. That's a Tobek name. The pilot cocked his head toward the astrogator. Malta OBEX, that's right. Stopa, expedition chief for the Abroan Institute's mission to Kala, shook his head as he studied the data coming from IX-26's sensors. My stars! What happened here? Glancing up at the view screen, the pilot said, Why, what do you mean? Looks just like 10,000 other ice balls. Josala Kren, the other half of the Abroan expedition, moved forward from her station. That's just it. The 3GS survey mission reported this as a temperate world. It had a population of 7 million and a primary ecosystem rated provisionally at complexity 2. Shaking his head, the pilot said dryly, "We must have missed the summer season." "That was expected," Stopa said. "When the 3GS contact mission came here, they found a third of the landmass glaciated." He left unspoken that the contact team had found the planet dead, the Kella civilization in ruins. "When the Tobak came, they must have thought this world was theirs for the taking, and gave it a claiming name," said Josala. "What difference does the name make? This is where you wanted to be, right? What am I missing?" "The last 3GS contact was 158 years ago," Stopa said. "The planet should have begun its recovery by now." "I still don't see the problem." "Yes, you do," Josala said. "The problem's all we can see. The problem is the ice." "Try me again?" Josala sighed. "Where'd you pick us up?" "Babali," the pilot said. "Wait, you don't have ice drills? Snow shelter? Cold suits?" "Babali's a tropical dig. For some reason, ice drills weren't on the equipment list," said Josala wryly. "Our rover isn't even rated for this kind of weather." The pilot whistled sympathetically. "Now I see the problem. But why'd they send you, then?" "We were the best solution to a two-variable equation," said Josala. "The nearest bioarchaeologist and the fastest available transportation." "It is not all bad," Stopa said thoughtfully. "We were sent here to recover biological samples. The glaciation virtually ensures that good samples still exist to be recovered." "Unless what triggered this climatic episode was a dirty war, with incendiaries or surface-burst weapons," Josala pointed out. "Not much atmosphere left, but I can drop a probe to take a sniff," said the pilot. "We ought to be able to settle that question pretty quickly." "No," said Stopa. "Put us in a mapping orbit. Let's have a look at the other side. We only need one landing site, a few grams of material. There could be a geothermal field, or some other sort of hot spot. A warm current from a deep vent, perhaps, that kept a portion of some seacoast ice-free. If so, surely the Kella would have fled there before the end." "You don't expect to find anyone alive, do you?" "Look at the surface temperature readings." "No, not alive," Stopa said. "But I would be grateful for a single corpse that is not buried under 300 meters of ice." "Mapping orbit it is," said the pilot, reaching for the controls. "Malta OBEX, here we come." "Kella," Josala amended quietly. "If at least a little bit of this planet doesn't still belong to the Kella, we're going to be a big disappointment to the folks who sent us here." From the close vantage of a standard mapping orbit, Kella's face proved no more inviting. The land was blanketed in ice to a depth of up to a kilometer, while the shrunken oceans, too salty to freeze, were thick with bergs and growlers. "That's it," said Stopa, studying the data from the final pass. "Some of the Kella might have tried to live on the ice. We might get lucky and find their remains only 50 or 100 meters down. It's something we can work on while we're waiting for reinforcements, but we have to assume the worst and call for help." "Maybe we can get Dr. Eccles's team," said Josala. "They were supposed to be finished with the Hoth excavation by now." "We can try. Open a hypercom link to the Obroan Institute," Stopa said. "Ready," said the pilot. "This is Dr. Cronach Stopa. Verification code Alpha Eager 442. I want supply and dispatch in on this call." "Done. Go ahead, Doctor." "I have an urgent requisition for additional equipment and staff for my current assignment." Stopa quickly rattled off the detailed list he had composed. "Have all that?" "Supply here? I haven't. We'll get working on it right away." "We also need a crack cold site team out here. Is Dr. Eccles' Hoth crew available?
They reported back yesterday. I don't know what their status is, said the dispatcher. But I'll send this up to the committee right away and get you an answer pronto.
Assuming that they are available, what's your best estimate of when we see them and the gear out here?
If we can push the turnaround on Penga Rift and get the team and gear aboard by midnight, you're looking at 16 standard days. Add on hour for any delays getting off.
Is anything faster than Penga Rift available?
Not under Institute registry, sorry.
Explore other options, Stopa said shortly. This has the highest priority. Stopa out. He signaled the pilot to end the link. Now, you'd better get me Krengish at New Republic Intelligence. They need to know there'll be a delay getting them what they asked for. There was little talking among the quartet trapped in the Vagabond's airlock. Everyone had a job to do. R2 searched for the inflow vents, while 3PO made entreaties to the Vagabond's masters. Lobot analyzed the acceleration and astrographic data, while he inventoried the equipment on the equipment sled. And Lando returned to the control handle in the corner of the compartment to see if it would respond to him. The handle proved immovable, and Lando's touch alone elicited no detectable response from the ship. But through his efforts, he realized that his bare hand was puffy, stiff, and aching. The pressure from the wrist collar was compounding the damage done by the decompression.
Do we have any sample bags?
Lando asked, returning to where Lobot and the equipment sled floated.
Yes, 6 small, 6 large, and 2 capsules of freeform sheet gel.
The bags, they're self-sealing, right?
Yes, Lando.
He paused.
I'm sorry. I don't have any more information. Do amnesiacs know that there are things they cannot remember? If so, then I know how it feels to have amnesia. What I know best is making links and browsing for information. I do not seem to have much other expertise.
Save the self-examination for another time,
said Lando.
Grab one of those small sample bags and see if we can't improvise a mitten for me.
Before long, they managed to attach the mouth of the sample bag above the wrist lock for the missing gauntlet. By squeezing the locking pins, Lando was able to make the wrist cuff relax. Almost immediately, the swelling in his fingers began to subside.
I do not know if the bag or the adhesive is strong enough to withstand another depressurization,
said Lobot.
I'm not counting on that,
Lando said.
I just don't want to lose consumables or the use of my hand. The odds are bad enough already. Did you get anything out of R2's data?
I believe I have our heading prior to the jump to within half a degree,
Lobot said, then rattled off the numbers.
I apologize for the imprecision.
That would put us on a course toward Sector 151,
Lando said.
Yes, the boundary is 8 light years from our original position.
Is there anyone out in 51 who might be able to help us?
I'm sorry, said Lobot. R2 has navigational data only. There is no geopolitical or sociological data.
Lando nodded.
Stop apologizing for what you can't give me. We haven't the time to spare. How far is this road open?
The imprecision of the heading becomes more significant the farther out we look, of course,
said Lobot.
The nearest body that is close enough to the center flight path and has a large enough gravity shadow to force a ship out of hyperspace is 41.53 light-years away.
Frowning, Lando said,
That doesn't help me much. Turn the question around. How far to the spot along this flight path that's the farthest from everything else?
Lobot closed his eyes and concentrated, but the answer came from R2-D2, as a long series of beeps and chirps.
R2 says that in 12.9 light-years, this vessel will enter the most isolated region along this flight path,
3PO offered.
At that point, there will be no charted bodies larger than a Class 5 comet for nearly 9 light-years in any direction.
Sounds like a good place to make a course change,
said Lando.
Far enough out to give us a little time to work with.
But we do not know how fast this vessel is capable of traveling in hyperspace, Lobot pointed out. That region could be 12 hours away, or 8, or 6, or even fewer. The conventional upper limit on hyperspace velocity may be technological rather than theoretical. And there's something else.
What?
If we do clear that gravity shadow 41 light-years from here, we'll be heading straight for the border of the New Republic, in the general direction of Fracas, in the core.
All the more reason not to just stand around waiting,
said Lando.
R2, what did you find?
R2 beeped and 3PO translated.
Master Lando, R2 says that there are no inflow vents anywhere in this chamber.
What? Then how was this chamber repressurized?
According to R2, the atmospheric gases are passing through the bulkheads molecule by molecule. He says that most of the surface area of the compartment is involved.
Let me get this straight. These bulkheads are porous?
R2 chittered, and 3PO offered the answer.
No, Master Lando, R2 says that molecules of gas simply appear on the surface.
Curious, said Lobot. I wonder if the bulkheads could be actually producing the gas.
R2, is there any area that's more involved with this process than the rest?
Asked Lando. The little droid jetted down to the center of the chamber and illuminated a band across the inner bulkhead with a beam of orange light from his holographic projector.
Got it. 3PO, give me a report on your progress.
The golden droid cocked his head.
Sir, so far I have hailed the masters of this vessel in 11,463 languages, offering our abject apologies and asking for their assistance. There has been no reply on any band I am capable of detecting.
Do those 6 million languages of yours happen to include the Kella?
Alas, Master Lando, they do not.
Do you have any information at all about the Kella language? Maybe it's related to some other language you are fluent in. The way that if you know Torak, you can almost get along in Tobek or Wetum.
I am sorry, Master Lando. I am completely at a loss.
What about matching up geographically?
Sir, it is a standard first contact procedure to attempt contact with regional languages when the native languages are known,
3PO said with a note of indignation.
I began with the 873 languages spoken in the sector where Bella is located, and continued with the 3,207 languages with direct links to those linguistic families.
And now you're just going A to Z on the rest?
I am continuing by astrographic proximity.
How long will it take you to try them all?
Master Lando, by reducing the wait time to the minimum specified by my protocols, I will be able to complete the initial series in 4.2 standard days.
That's about what I figured,
said Lando.
Lobot, dig out the cutting blaster. We're going to have to make our own door.
With a grim expression on his face, Admiral Hiram Drayson sat on the edge of his desk and studied the final contact report from Colonel Pakpakat at Gamir Ascalon. The recordings from the spotter ships were dramatic and alarming. Moments before the Vagabond broke away, a ring of 6 rounded bumps, accumulator nodes or beam radiators, Drayson thought, appeared at the forward end of the ship. A fierce blue light began to dance over the bow. Moments later, twin beams of energy shot out from 2 of the nodes and scissored back through the gap between the Vagabond and Lady Luck, slicing them apart. Another pair of beams knifed out from 2 other nodes and carved through the interdiction generator on the underbelly of the Picket Cowrie. The blowback surge from the fully charged generator destroyed Cowrie's power compartment and left the ship afire and dead in space. The instant Cowrie was neutralized, the Vagabond began to move, turning away from Lady Luck and accelerating out past the disabled Picket's position, well clear of the remaining interdictors. Just 42 seconds after it began, it was over, the Vagabond vanishing into the center of a hyperspace cone. The final tally for the contact: 1 drone ferret destroyed, 1 interdiction picket disabled and abandoned, with 26 casualties, including 6 fatalities in the power compartment. One yacht recovered and returned to a mooring on Glorious's hull, undamaged except for the primary airlock. One successful boarding of the target. One successful escape by the target. One expedition armada scattered across space with 4 ships in pursuit of the target and the others pulling ambulance or cleanup duty. And, most troubling of all to Drayson, one contact suit gauntlet recovered in the debris. Right hand, in Lando's size. The report contained some positive information as well. It was beyond dispute now that the Vagabond's weapons were compound. The intersection of 2 or more beams did the damage, probably through some sort of harmonic resonance. Unless there were more weapon nodes concealed amidships, it seemed as though 6 targets were all the Vagabond could handle. Possibly as few as 4 ships, properly spaced, might overwhelm its defenses. But first, Kube-McDowell would have to find the Vagabond again, a task that had taken 2 years the last time. Drayson called up the chart of the pursuit and studied it closely. 3 ships were racing for search stations along the Vagabond's last heading. Lightning, 10 light-years out, Glorious, 20, and Marauder, 30. The improvised plan called for them to drop sensor buoys with hypercom repeaters at those entry points, and then begin making short jumps out to the limits of sensor range, hoping to catch a glimpse of their quarry. The precision of the plan did not mask its weakness. Its slim chance of success depended on the Vagabonds making a single short jump. If it followed a short jump with a second jump on another heading, where there were no eyes to see or sensors to track, or if it carried the first jump out 50, 100, 500 light-years beyond the borders of the New Republic and into the chaos of the core. Drayson knew that Colonel Kube-McDowell had addressed an urgent appeal for more ships to both New Republic intelligence and the Fleet Office before Glorious jumped out from Gamir Ascalon. He also knew the likely answer to that appeal.
The only real chance for us to catch her lies with you, Lando.
Drayson said softly.
You must help us find you.
But it was not Drayson's way to abandon someone he had sent into danger. His fingers danced over his controller, bringing an inventory of Alpha Blue's assets in Sector 151 to the screen. There might be little he could do, but he would do what he could, and there was always some way to alter the odds. The habits of the Senate's Council on Security and Intelligence were not unlike those of the institutions over which it reigned. It announced no meetings, released no public reports, and met only in closed session in the field-shielded room 030, deep in the sub-basements of the old Imperial Palace. So earnestly secretive were the 7 sitting members that in Coruscant's own dialect of Basic, the phrase CSI agenda had become a benchmark for the unattainable, the impossible item on a scavenger hunt. Discouraged suitors would despair that they had a better chance of taking a CSI agenda home. Subordinates handed a daunting task could comfort themselves with the thought, it could be worse. He could want a CSI agenda, too. Even Drayson found it difficult to discover when the CSI would take up Kube-McDowell's request. And when he finally did learn about that session, it was too late to find a way to listen in. Last item on the agenda is the Talan Expedition, said General Kylist Raiken. May I assume that you all received your copies of the report? He waited a moment, then, hearing no dissent, went on. Discussion, please. Senator Kral Prajet of Vedatha, chairman of the CSI, leaned back in his chair and combed his fingers back through his skull down. What is there to decide? The mission was a failure. Close the books. Lando Calrissian and his team are still aboard the Vagabond. Raiken reminded him gently. What reason do you have to think they're still alive? Prajet asked. Why would any captain capable of acting as surely and decisively as the captain of the Vagabond did in escaping make the mistake of not repelling boarders with equal vigor? It is possible that they were taken prisoner, said Raiken. It is even possible that they escaped capture. Prajet pulled his datapad toward him.
How do you account for the contact suit Gauntlet found by the recovery teams? It's Calrissian's, I believe.
I don't have an explanation, Raiken admitted.
General Raiken,
said Senator Kertok Noin.
do I understand correctly that the gauntlet is undamaged and there's no blood on it?
That's correct. She nodded.
In that case, this gauntlet does not seem to me to be reason enough to abandon these people to their fate.
It's not clear to me what we can do for them, said Senator Amamanam, who represented the Badass on Coruscant. Unless Senator Noim would like to lead us in prayer to the Star Mother. The laughter around the table was cold, but Noim's eyes were colder.
There are two lives at stake here. The lives of two valuable friends of the New Republic. And please, remember that the droids are of no small value either. They had their own role in making it possible for there to be a New Republic. I doubt there are any droids anywhere who are better known than these two, or better loved for that matter. If they are so important to the New Republic, they should be in the museum along with all the other beloved icons, said Prajet curtly. Along with Luke Skywalker, to whom they belong? Asked Senator Lillard. I must agree with Kertok. I would not want to face the questions that would come if these four were to disappear in our service, and we were to make no effort to recover them.
In our service? Have you read the account of how they came to be on that ship? They can hardly be said to be in our service, said Senator Amamanam. General, could you kindly explain to us how it is that the Baron Calrissian and the others came to be involved in the first place? I don't recall there being any mention of them in the expedition plan you brought to us. General Calrissian was representing the fleet on this mission, at the request of the fleet office, Raiken said deliberately. The others comprise his support staff, apparently assembled specifically for this mission.
This is also absurd, Prajet fumed. If it were Hamax and his men on board the Vagabond, as it should have been, we would not be having this discussion. Either they would have disabled the ship, or we'd be sending our regrets to the families of the missing in action.
Senator?
But Pakpakat allowed these meddlers, these outsiders, these amateurs to intervene, and suddenly it becomes impossible to write off our losses in a professional manner.
Raiken tried again. Senator, have the reports from Colonel Pakpakat led you to reevaluate the potential gain if we succeed in recovering the Keller vessel?
No, General,
said Prajet, with a touch of impatience at being handled.
I'm still quite convinced that this artifact is worthy of our interest. But I don't see that the circumstances justify sending a Force 2 armada wandering through 1,000 cubic light-years on what is very likely to be a futile effort.
With all the uncertainty in Farlax, we could surely find better uses for those ships than chasing a phantom, said Senator Amamanam. The Vagabond will turn up again.
Will you be personally handling the apologies to Luke Skywalker, then?
Senator Noim asked cuttingly.
Will the chairman make himself available to the news grids to explain exactly under what circumstances these notables disappeared?
If I might make a suggestion, Raiken began.
By all means, said Prajet.
A contact suit isn't designed for long endurance. Its recycling systems are simple and relatively inefficient. Its consumables, if managed wisely, might last the wearer perhaps 200 hours, certainly no more than 220, said the intelligence director.
So we simply wait a few days to declare them dead, is that your point?
Not quite, Raiken said. If they are still alive, the General and his team will be highly motivated to act expeditiously. Anything they can do to impede the flight of the Keller vessel, they will do in the next several days. So it seems only prudent to me to allow Pakpakat to continue the search for, say, another 15 days. If nothing else, said Senator Amamanam, doing so would cut the heart out of the charge that we abandon the Baron to his fate. He glanced expectantly down the table toward Senator Noim.
If you'd truly like to protect yourself, I suggest you go one step further and propose that we send Pakpakat the additional vessels he requested, said Noin. Otherwise, the search might be seen as the token gesture it is. No, said Prajet. Pakpakat gets no more ships. That incompetent Hortek spook, what he ought to get is a review board and a dishonorable separation. But I suppose I'll have to settle for the General's finding a deep dark hole to drop him in once this is over. I wouldn't support sending additional ships, said Raiken, ignoring Prajet's other comments. The way I see it, we now have assets aboard the target vessel. That changes the tactical equation. We're not going to be trying to run it into an interdiction net or firing on it. We just need to find it and be on hand to pick up our people. I see Pakpakat only has 4 vessels actively committed to the search at this point. That's right, said Raiken. So, I think we can reasonably talk about downsizing our commitment to this project. If everyone will look at page 15 in the mission outline, the ship assignment list.